I thought maybe we'd bring in the fake news. We'll have them standing out. You'll make a nice statement on behalf of your company. We'll do a quick thing and go around the room. And it's an honor to have you here. So these are restaurant, what a great business to be in. But perhaps not this week, right? I saw you on television, good job. Perhaps not this week, but it'll get good. You know, we're trying to get deductibility, meaning companies the old way. Remember the old days when a company could do deductions on entertainment, on restaurants and things? When they changed that was a disaster for the restaurant industry, if you remember. I remember that well. In fact, they actually tried to shame the restaurant industry. How dare you go to a restaurant? You know, it was like a big shame thing. But today we're back where we can, I think, probably get it back. And Steve, you're working on that very hard, right? Yes. Deductibility for entertainment, clubs, restaurants. I think it'll bring it back. So let's bring them in and say a few words. We have markets only up 950 points. So hopefully that'll stay. A lot of positive things are happening. How's the book? How's it doing? You know it was good. Doing good? Hot topic.
Definitely.
Well, thank you very much. We're here with the leaders of the restaurant industry. It's an industry that's been tremendously impacted by what's happening with COVID. And it's an industry that we're working very hard with and on. We're looking at doing deductibility so that a corporation can use a restaurant or entertainment, clubs, et cetera, and get deductibility. I think that'll really have a big impact. Steve can maybe talk about it, Steve Mnuchin. But I'd like to have some of these leaders talk about, real quickly, about their company and the industry and any ideas they have. And I think we can do it in front of the media for a little while, and then we can answer a couple of questions, and we're going to get back to business, okay? Please.
Well, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Secretary Mnuchin, Secretary Scalia, and everyone else here, including my brethren from the restaurant industry, thanks so much for having us here. It's an honor for me to be here representing 10,000 restaurants in the U.S. We have Burger King, Popeyes, and Tim Hortons. These restaurants are owned by small businesses. We have franchisees from coast to coast that work day in, day out. We have team members that are in the restaurants day in and day out. We've been in the restaurants working as an essential service since the beginning of the crisis in March. We have had our drive-thrus open and delivery open, but we've still had a tremendous impact on our business, and so we're really looking forward to the process of reopening the economy, reopening the country. We already have about 1,000 locations around the country that have started to open the dining rooms with reduced capacity. We've added PPE, we've added safe and social distancing in the restaurants to ensure that people can come in. We have acrylic screens in the front counter. We have masks and gloves for the employees to ensure that everyone feels safe, our guests and our team members. I just wanted to thank the President, Mr. President, and your administration. I think you've acted quickly, swiftly, and with good measure. The CARES Act and the PPP had a tremendous impact on our businesses. I think there's a lot we think that can do to make a very good program even better. One of the things that we've talked about as we were kind of chatting here is this idea of extending the 8-week deadline. We think that 8-week deadline, when it was implemented, was probably 8 weeks probably seemed like an eternity, but today we're in the 10th week of the pandemic, and I think it's going to take some time for our restaurants and our owners to get back to the capacity levels and the traffic levels that we were seeing pre-COVID. And so a little more time, we think probably taking it to 24 weeks would be appropriate to allow for restaurant owners that are participating in the program to be able to manage through and rehire the employees, which is what the purpose of PPP was intended for. There was two other things that I think are important for us. One is we think business liability protection for small businesses is important. We're going to see potentially with the reopening of the economy, with the reopening of small restaurants, we're going to see frivolous, I think, and unfounded lawsuits against restaurant owners, against small businesses that are trying to do the right thing, trying to survive and trying to keep their businesses going. So we firmly believe that protection from these types of frivolous lawsuits would be helpful. And then finally, to the extent that there's additional federal assistance that's targeted for the restaurant industry, I think the restaurant industry as a whole participated to the tune of about 9% of the PPP, and we think there should be additional funds available for us to be able to weather and continue to weather the storm. But we're really proud to be here, proud to be part of this extraordinary group of restaurant leaders, and thank you so much for the opportunity to be here.
Well, thank you. That's a lot, 10,000 restaurants, and that's some big group and good group too. I know your chains, and I know a lot about your company. It's a great company, so you'll be back very soon. I have no doubt about it. And some of the things you mentioned we'll be talking about. I do want to say before we go further, so this was a very big day therapeutically, cure-wise and vaccine-wise. Tremendous progress has been made, as I've been saying for 2 weeks, because I've been seeing what's going on and I think spearheading it largely. And this was a very, very, some big announcements are coming and have just come out, and the market's up almost 1,000 points. You'll check your market. I'm sure you did before you walked in the room, but I imagine your company's doing better today than it was a week ago, right?
We're focused on the profitability of our franchisees. That's my focus.
Okay, good. So what we have is big announcements coming. Big announcements have already come, and tremendous progress has been made therapeutically, cure-wise, and also, obviously, vaccine. To me, therapeutically and cure is more important than vaccine because it's immediate. And if we have something, even people that are very sick right now, we try and expedite everything so it goes really quickly, really, really quickly, like let's get it going immediately. So if you have somebody that's not going to make it, if you have somebody that's going to pass away, going to die, and if we have something that we think works, we want to get them immediately into those hospitals or wherever the people are located. So that's being talked about also with the FDA, with Dr. Stephen Hahn, who's doing a fantastic job. And so we're trying to expedite things. But very importantly, just overall, what big news it is medically. We are so far ahead of where you would normally be just from a logistical standpoint. And that's the other thing. We're also gearing up and close to geared up because we have tremendous people in the military, so they'll be able to deliver service very rapidly. So a lot of good things are happening, and let's see what happens in the very near future. Steve, you have anything to say?
Just want to add, Mr. President, that thank you for all being here. We appreciate how many people you employ as an industry and the special issues that we have, and we look forward to continuing to work with you.
Good, thank you very much. How are you doing on deductibility, Steve? How's that going? Good? Good, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Really appreciate you gathering us here today. This is a great representation of restaurants from across the country. Jose with his 10,000, my 2 on Bourbon Street. I am the president and CEO of Galatoire's. We've been there since 1905.
Yeah, right.
And, restaurants are the cornerstone of so many communities where some big business is absent. Restaurants are there, and we employ so many people. We just appreciate how swiftly y'all have acted to bring relief our way. We think with just a few small changes in cover period and length of the cover period on the forgiveness of PPP, we have a real great opportunity. And, just the very nature of restaurants in general, we rely on social interaction. So it makes us really unique that we were hit hard quickly, and it's going to make our comeback really difficult. That being said, I'm glad to hear your news.
Yeah.
That there's
Well, my
some-
news negates what you just said, because
Yeah.
you would be back into business like you had it.
Yeah.
No seats lost, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
we'll see what happens, but it certainly negates it, yeah.
Yeah. So, in the interim, we appreciate the opportunity to be in front of you. Longer cure periods on the test periods on the loans would be incredible. A city like New Orleans, we have 1,500 restaurants, but only 400,000 people. And so when you look at that, how do we survive? We survive with leisure and business travelers. 19 million visitors last year. And that being said, it's going to take us a little time to ramp back up. So we're looking forward to that period of time, and we believe that you guys have the opportunity to help us. We greatly appreciate it. We've survived Hurricane Katrina. We've survived the BP oil spill.
Yeah.
Restaurateurs are a resilient group, very tenacious, and so we're there, and we appreciate your help.
So your area was amazing because it was hit hard, but it was very late. We didn't think it was going to be hit at all, and then all of a sudden it spiked up after you had a certain event.
Yeah.
And who knows what caused it, but maybe it was that.
Yeah.
And then it's doing incredibly well right now. It's really down at a low
Yeah,
number.
we've made great progress. The governor's done a really good job. That being said, 25% capacity is tough. To literally think
agree.
that this week when we reopen at 25%, we'll lose
No.
more money than last week because now we're incurring expenses.
You got to get 100%, okay?
Yes,
You got
sir.
to get up, and I hope it's going to be up very fast. I hope the governor does that pretty quickly. Let's see how it goes. A lot has to do with what I said in my opening remarks. Ivanka, do you have anything to say? I know you like this industry.
Well, I've spoken with many of the people around this table over the course of the past several weeks and beforehand, and I do think it's worth noting the Paycheck Protection Program has given restaurants alone, that industry alone, over $30 billion of relief, representing 250,000 restaurants nationwide, and that's just where we are today. So the feedback has been tremendously helpful. The Secretary's made some changes in the guidance and to, of course, informing new policy as we come out of this. But we really appreciate your being here, and we thank you for the feedback.
Thank you, honey.
Hi, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Secretary, all of you, thank you for having us. My name is Will Guidera of 11 Madison Park in New York City, but I'm also a founding member of the Independent Restaurant Coalition. We started just 7 weeks ago, and we're here because we got together to represent the 500,000 independent restaurants across America. I'm talking about the mom and pops, your local diner, the pizza place, the pasta joint, and the 3 Michelin star restaurant, and honestly, everything in between. The things that represent the cultural fabric of our cities and of our towns, and the things that I believe, as a country, we need to fight to keep. We also represent the 11 million people that work in those independent restaurants across the country. Listen, it's clear that this administration cares about our industry. And it's also clear that all of you understand the extent to which we are more specifically vulnerable than a lot of other industries in America. And I think that's why we're here today. And so I think it's just important to take a moment and acknowledge that and say thank you that we're taking this time.
Thank you, Will, very much.
PPP is important, and the changes that have already been talked about and are going to continue being talked about today are very important. And if those changes are made such that people feel confidence that they can spend that money and have it forgiven, I think that will be the thing that allows our restaurants to reopen. That said, we need something more than that that is specific to independent restaurants in order for our restaurants to stay open. Everyone here knows that last month alone, I think in the first half of April, more than 1 out of 4 people that applied for unemployment were restaurant workers. 1 out of 4. It's just insane. And so we've put forward a plan to members of Congress and to this administration that we put forward because it'll put all of those people that are currently unemployed back to work, such that by the 3rd quarter of this year, we're going to be looking at unemployment reports that are astonishingly good, not to mention the supply chain that we represent. If restaurants go down, the commercial real estate industry, the farming industry. And so our plan helps bring unemployment back to where it needs to be, and it supports a lot of our other industries that rely on independent restaurants for their survival. And so we appreciate being here. We'd love the opportunity to talk more about this. I know that in times like this, a lot of people have their hands out. I don't take that lightly. I do believe that independent restaurants are more vulnerable than most and a really important part of this nation, and I don't want to lose them. And so we appreciate your consideration and your support.
Okay, thank you very much, Will. Appreciate it. Larry, please.
48 states are opening. That's a big plus. And the vaccination research news was great today, so we see it in the stock market. I want to thank everybody for being here. We are working hard. Steve mentioned the tax deductions for restaurants. We're also working very hard on the COVID-19 liability restrictions. That's going to be a key part of our next package. And I just want to say, I guess I'm usually the optimist, but we're in a terrible pandemic contraction here in the second quarter. We know that. And there's a lot of hardship and a lot of heartbreak. But there's also a few glimmers of hope, of recovery, because I know you, sir, believe in the second half recovery, and I do too, and I think with the right policies we can have a booming next year. But the signs are housing demand looks better, gasoline demand looks better, the Apple Mobility Index looks better. That's, you know, people dialing up to see where to get from A to B. New York State's Empire State, the manufacturing index was up enormously. I don't know where that came from, but it was. Unemployment claims each week look terrible, but they're a lot less terrible, from 7 million to 3 million. So there are some glimmers of hope. Kevin has some data on better credit card numbers. So it's a tough haul, but I think things are starting to turn. That's my take. Wish everybody luck.
I think so, Larry. Maybe much more than people understand, and you're starting to see that. Going to come back strong. Please.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Secretary Scalia, Secretary, I want to thank you for having us here today. I have restaurants across the United States. We average 27 employees per restaurant. These are the small businesses across in each of these communities that those 27 people have families, have mortgages, have rents, have car payments to make every day. And being able to stay open and work with the governors and get the PPP money, and to be able to give people reassurances that tomorrow is going to be better than it was today, and to give them that hope has been really important for us, our business, and those families. And I want to thank you for your leadership and your team's leadership in doing so. One of the things we talk about in the business is how well we talk about treating others and bringing people into the family and bringing them into the restaurant like you bring them into your home. And that's what we do in the restaurant business every day. We treat everyone like family. And doing so and having the leadership here has been really helpful to us and the entire industry. And frankly, 8 weeks, 9 weeks ago, I was thinking about this Chinese nightmare, and I didn't want it to affect the American dream that we all had. And I'm a success story about the American dream, going from $3.45 an hour starting at the front counter in a fast food restaurant to what we have today. And I couldn't be prouder.
How many restaurants?
I own and operate 765 restaurants across the United States now.
That's fantastic.
And,
Wow.
and it's, I couldn't be, it's an American dream, sir. And I appreciate everything everyone's doing here to keep that dream going. And tomorrow is going to be better than today, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
If we get deductibility, you'll do better than you did 2 months ago.
Thank you, sir.
That's my opinion. Please, go ahead, Kevin. Give it,
Yeah.
let us know what's going to happen.
Yeah, sir, first of all, you might recall when we first started talking about the economic damage that was coming from the shutdown, that we emphasized right from the beginning that this industry and the travel industry were going to be the hardest hit. And so we've been focused like a laser beam on coming up with policy ideas to do something about it. And as you said, we've got a really good plan. The thing I could say is that if you look at the real-time data, as Larry said, that you really are starting to see glimmers of hope. And maybe even like you could even characterize it a little more optimistically than that. Larry's being super cautious, but the credit card data are really going up. The number of businesses open in the country is skyrocketing. I mean, the country's getting back now, and I think that there's a great reason for optimism for this group, because you can really see things going much, much faster forward than I expected. I know I was pretty depressed about how bad it looked and how slow it was going to be a few weeks ago, but now you can really see it turning on faster than I thought.
There's a tremendous demand, tremendous pent-up demand. It's true. Don't forget, we turned it off artificially. It was just stopped. We went from the greatest economy in history of any country to we have to stop. And we saved, by doing that, millions of lives. We saved hundreds of thousands, but probably millions of lives. And we did the right thing, and now we have to open, and now we're going to do great. And if if this comes along, what we're hearing medically from these great companies, these great geniuses, if this happens, that's really going to be something. So, great job, thank you. Please.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Secretary Scalia, Secretary Mnuchin, it's an honor to be here today. My name is Marvin Irby, and on behalf of the National Restaurant Association, thank you for convening this meeting of these industry leaders on this very important subject. To be honest with you, normally at this time, I'd spend a lot of time telling you about this industry. But what's been clear over the last several months is that you get it. This administration gets it. You know everything about our world-famous chefs, our esteemed independents, our beloved brands that dot every community in this country. And I'm proud to say that for over 100 years, the National Restaurant Association has represented all restaurants that play a key role in our society and an integral role in our food chain. I have the opportunity that I get to speak to restaurateurs every single day, and I can confirm we desperately want to reopen. Our restaurants are desperate and are heartbroken that at this time we can't provide the support and the comfort to the communities in which we serve. For too many restaurants right now, an incident happened 60 days ago that has crippled us, and before today's news, we did not see an end date until later this year. Programs like the Paycheck Protection Program are an incredible first step. And thank you, Secretary Mnuchin, for this program, which has benefited millions of small companies throughout this country. We also appreciate Ivanka Trump's dedication to our industry, and I personally want to thank you for the time you've taken to talk to our board over the last months of this crisis. Mr. President, the Payroll Protection Program would be a godsend if we could make one change, if we could extend the time that we have to spend the proceeds. In too many communities today, the 8-week period is simply not enough time.
So how much time are you on?
24 weeks?
How about 30 weeks?
30 weeks works. 30
How
weeks
about-
works.
How about 75 weeks? I know a couple of you, you'll never stop, right? I know a couple of guys in this room. Now, I understand. So you think it needs to be, what would you say would be a minimum length?
24 weeks.
How much?
24 weeks. You need to give our smaller restaurateurs the opportunities to open, to begin to have demand, and bring back the employees.
Is that, what were you going to say in terms of timing?
Yeah, I think for the PPP fixes, if we could take it from 8 weeks to 24 weeks,
Is that the term,
yeah,
more or less the term you're thinking about?
and then move June 30th to October 31st. If those two changes were made to that program, it would change it dramatically.
What's more important, that or deductibility?
That.
Yes.
Deductibility is amazing, but it's almost like we need to build the house first. Deductibility is the thing that makes the house.
Does anybody disagree with that? Because I think deductibility is the biggest thing you can possibly do.
Mr.
Does
President,
anybody?
I think that if what he's saying is, if we could get the 24 weeks, which gets us to October 31st, basically, right? This allows us to get the young restaurateurs going and spend the money that you intended for them so that we can get out and show them what a great job you guys are doing.
But you're pretty unified on the number 24, right?
Yes, sir.
24.
Yes. And
Go ahead, please.
And the
Finish.
best thing about it, it's no additional money. It's an extension of the current program.
Okay.
So,
Got it.
Oh, the deductibility thing is great.
Can I
I
just
just
ask?
don't want to not support that. I think it's just a matter of waiting. We need to get the restaurants open first, and these changes allow us to get them open.
I just wanted to clarify, because you said it's no additional money. Are you saying just the time period, because it's 8 weeks going to 24, you still have 8 weeks of money, or you want 24 weeks of money?
oh no, we want 24 weeks in order to spend.
To spend the 8 weeks.
Correct.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification.
We believe that if we elongate
Is that
that test.
correct? Does everybody agree with that?
Yes, sir. If we can elongate the test period, it gives us more staying power, and we can spend that money and really get where we need to be.
Good.
So,
And what about the payroll tax, by the way? How do you feel about that? Is that a big deal?
Yes, sir.
That would be an extraordinarily big deal.
Yes.
And how does that compare with what we're talking about with the time period? Payroll tax?
I would say deductibility, payroll tax deductions, all those things are spectacular, and we need them, and they would be greatly beneficial.
But-
We're viewing the PPP fix as what we need to
So the
get out of the
PPP was
rut.
really a big deal?
Yes, sir.
So we hit it right. When we did it, we hit it right. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Am I doing wrong? It was such a big deal, sir, that we haven't laid off a single person, and there's 20,000 people that are paying their taxes, they're paying their bills, and they're doing all that every day. And without that, I don't think we would have been able to do that, sir. That's how big a deal it is.
Great.
Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, good afternoon. Thank you so much for your leadership, ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor to be here, and I deeply appreciate the opportunity. My name is Narain. I represent Panera Bread. Panera has 2,500 cafes, revenues of about $6 billion, and we employ 140,000 people. The pandemic impacted us very deeply, as it did everybody else. We lost close to 50% of our revenue in the first week. Since then, it is slowly coming back, but we still have a long way to go. Now, the
So
health crisis,
You got down by 50% or
Yeah.
more than that?
50 to 60% was the revenue decline.
That's not bad.
And and I think what's good is that it's actually coming back since that time.
Good.
Thanks to a lot of the innovation that we've been able to do.
Good. But, so you got maximum, though, 50% of revenue loss?
Yeah.
How'd you keep the other 50%?
So the 50% that we have by ensuring, so fortunately, I think in Panera, we have very strong omni-channel business.
Right.
So we have delivery, rapid pickup, drive-through.
You did very well.
And so on.
That's
Yeah.
great. Great job. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think we've had to innovate very quickly, and I'll share some of those ideas. So I believe that the health crisis is now becoming a financial crisis, with 36 million Americans unemployed, and a humanitarian crisis as well, with about 54 million Americans fighting hunger. And therefore, I think opening up the economy right now in a phased manner is the right thing to do. I also believe that we as leaders need to also step up and do the right thing at this time, and do what we can do, what's in our control. And I'll share some ideas and thoughts in terms of what Panera has been doing, largely with the intent to innovate and do that with compassion and heart. So for our furloughed employees, we have free family meals every week for them, emergency relief funds, and also we've made arrangements with peer companies that are actually hiring at this time, like CVS, Walmart, to hire our furloughed employees temporarily and then return them back. For customers, we've innovated very quickly. We've launched the curbside pickup service with geofencing and also free Wi-Fi outside the cafes, because life is moving to outside the cafes. And also doing a lot for our communities, especially those impacted most by the pandemic. So doctors and nurses, we are serving about 50,000 meals to doctors and nurses in New York, children in the state of Ohio with our partnership with USDA. And also, we've launched a program called Together Without Hunger with Feeding America, and have pledged to serve 500,000 meals to children and families through Feeding America.
Great.
So I think it's very important at this time that I think we need to also step up and contribute. We were able to keep 85% of our cafes open. We were determined to keep them open so that we could keep our associates employed at that time, and therefore now we're beginning to open up the dining areas in phases, following all the guidelines, but also have stringent protocols that we've put in place, like plexiglass barriers, wellness stations for temperature checks, social distancing norms, etc.
Will you be keeping any of that? I mean, there are some innovations that have been made. Some people say maybe we'll keep it. Would you be keeping any of that or not really?
Yes, I think there's going to be a shift in how the consumers are going to interact with brands. and I think it is time for us to innovate. So another example is,
Would you ever keep the plexiglass barriers?
so I think we'll keep the plexiglass barriers.
I mean, on a permanent basis, I'm talking about.
I think at least over the next 6 to 9 months.
Right, but could you see that being permanent? Because hopefully you're not going to have it that long, by the way, 9 months. But would you see a thing like that? You'd have to build a nicer version of it, as opposed to quickly throwing it up. But would you see something like that being permanent, possibly?
I think hopefully if the virus is under control and we've gotten to the other side of it, I think then we can get back to life as we once knew.
You'd rather not have it.
We'd rather move back to life as we once knew it, right? Rather not have.
I agree.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
agree.
Exactly.
Okay.
And another, I think, interesting innovation is that recognizing that there's so much high friction with high-demand grocery items where you can't get them home delivered, we launched a new line of business called Panera Grocery in 10 days, and we're delivering, bakery items, fresh produce, dairy to customers in less than an hour on the same day. So I think the good thing is it's forced us to really innovate and be very responsive.
Good.
I think the restaurant industry is deeply, deeply appreciative of all the support and the efforts that you and the administration have made. I think the CARES Act has been hugely welcomed. I would like to, in particular, thank you for the PPP program because it's made a huge difference to our franchise partners and our associates. I think with a few of the amendments that we talked about, I'd fully agree with the 8 weeks to 24 weeks. I think that is badly needed. I think that will be hugely welcomed. And
Steve, does that make sense from our standpoint? What do you think?
We're working on a technical fix that we do have bipartisan support for to extend it. I'm not sure it's that long, but I've spoken to the SBA committee, and there is bipartisan support, so we're working on that.
And I think we talked about the limited liability. I think that's also a very important aspect. And thirdly,
The Democrats don't want to give you the liability provision. They just don't want to have that. And it's crazy that they don't. But the Democrats do not want to give that to people, and that's not a good thing.
and I think the third
But we'll
thing is,
get
I
it
think
anyway. Go ahead.
our employees are, I think if we can eliminate the friction in the furloughed employees being able to access their unemployment benefits, that'll also be fantastic.
And that, the problem there is the states have old equipment in many cases, and they're unable to get the money. We gave the money out immediately, but the states are unable, some states are unable to give it out. They have 40-year-old equipment,
Yeah.
and some states are unable to get their act together. But we gave that out long ago, as you probably know.
Yeah.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Brooke, would you like to say a few words?
Mr. President, thank you. Just a few words. I am so grateful for all of you being here today. I am struck by the stories of true American dreams. I mean, starting at $3.45 an hour, and then ultimately owning so many restaurants and hundreds of thousands, but I'm also hundreds of thousands of employees. But I'm also struck by this president and vice president's commitment to our most vulnerable populations and their American dream, working in all of your restaurants. This president is the jobs president. I think that none of us, other than maybe my boss, realized the economy that we would achieve in just 3 short years, where there were more people, more jobs available than people to fill them. And what I am so encouraged by is the resoluteness and the conviction of this president, this vice president, but truly the American entrepreneurs that are sitting around the table today and working alongside all of you as we bring this country back to even greater heights than we ever knew possible. The transition to greatness is really what America and the American dream is all about. So thank you all for being here. Know that we are here to help you always, and we are here to make sure that what this president led on and has achieved will be once again very, very soon. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Brooke. Great job.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, and Secretaries for having me here today. My name's Tim Love. I'm a chef and owner of a few restaurants in Texas and Tennessee. I also am the chef of 4 major music festivals and food festivals around the country. So I've been greatly affected by, obviously, what's happened here, along with everybody else in this room. But what I wanted to speak to you about today is that to touch on the PPP and to kind of clarify what we were saying is the 24 weeks is only set up because certain restaurants aren't able to open now. In Texas, we were able to open on May 1st, and I quickly activated the PPP and tried to get all my employees back. I've hired 80% of my workforce. I started with 490 employees. We've got about 400 employees already back. And I will say it's encouraging to see people come out. They're excited. They want to be out.
What would have happened if you didn't have PPP?
Well, if I didn't
Would
have
you have
people,
survived it? Would you have gotten by?
I probably would have gotten by, but this allows us to do it the way that we feel like it should be, to take care of the employees first. We want to take care of our employees and make sure they're safe. Same activation we're having when opening the restaurants. We want to open the restaurants safely, make sure our employees are safe first, so our guests can be safe. I'd ask from the administration to put out that confidence, to get the American people understanding that it is great to go out and that our economy is going to be great again, because we know where it was before it started. We know how to get there, clearly. So now, just with a couple of adjustments to things that are already written, to the Secretary's point, we're not asking for more money. We're just asking the opportunity to spend it the way that you want us to spend it, the way it was intended, to take care of our employees when we're able to open up. That's it.
That should be easy, Steve, honestly.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I think you can take care of that
Yeah,
for
we're
sure.
working on it, Mr.
That should be
President.
easy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so
That's like one of the easiest requests I've ever heard, Larry.
That's right. But that leads me to my next request. The 75-25, the way that it's spent, I know is tough, but I'm speaking for my friends who are in New York, not necessarily for myself, even in Texas, where the rents are higher, and they need the ability to spend the money on rent if necessary, so long as they're hiring their employees back. So while the number one thing is to get the workforce back, reduce unemployment, get people back to work, which is what I'm doing at 25%. Believe me, I'm not going and building new houses on my 25% of occupancy. But what I am doing is putting the great American people back to work that I love, and the way we get the economy going is getting the workers back to work so they're able to spend money and earn money, so therefore we can keep the economy moving. And so those two adjustments to the PPP, which don't require any extra money from the administration, from Congress, allows us to really move the economy forward, which I know is one of your number one things, especially as we're moving along this year. And I think you can get a lot of people in our industry, the workers, the people work very, very hard to get behind you, just to show that kind of confidence.
I think you will. How many restaurants are there total, everything, in the United States? How many are there?
Yeah.
How much? 650,000 restaurants. Who would think that's 11% of the overall? 650,000 restaurants. Who would ever think that's possible even, right? That's good. And it's been a great business over the years, and it'll be
And
better
there'll be
than ever.
650,000 again, so long as you
That's
keep doing what you're
fantastic,
doing.
though.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
no, well, I think deductibility gets that. Actually, I think
I would agree with
you'll
that.
go very substantially. They got rid of a lot of restaurants when they ended that. People don't realize it. Then you get used to it. You had fewer restaurants. They rented to other things. Now I don't know what they're going to rent to.
And to your
frankly.
point about that, sir, the deductibility, which you can easily identify with, and it does spread wealth amongst the restaurants, most definitely. We're talking just about an immediate concern with the PPP to get people moving
Yeah.
forward so that we can get
I
this
agree.
deductibility going.
No, I agree. We'll look at that very strongly.
Yes, sir, thank you.
Okay.
Hello, Mr. President, and it sees how important it is to all of y'all, this subject, because I haven't seen this much firepower from all of y'all except at a state dinner or a Christmas party. So I appreciate, Mr. President, that all of you guys are here, because I know you're really trying to get something done. I own a company, Landry's, which is in 40 states, and is all full-service restaurants. So I average like 150 employees per restaurant. And it's everything from Del Frisco's to Mastro's to Martin's to Palm, but then it's on the other side, the Bubba Gumps, the Rainforest, and they're all company-owned. It's been devastating, and it's funny you brought up about China. I should have realized it was going to be a bad year for China when my general manager tweeted out, freedom for Hong Kong. So that started my
And you
year
kept
with
it
China.
quiet, right? You
And
kept that
right.
quiet.
So I'm still trying to work that out. And here comes something else.
He owns the Houston Rockets, in case you don't know. And he's and by the way, he's a great guy, great family, great everything. And, yeah, he did cause you a little ruckus. Whatever happened to him, by the way? Is he still working for you?
Yes, he is.
He must be pretty good.
Yes, because it's just it's a trick question, but he is. But Mr. President, everybody's talking about the PPP, and when your team designed the PPP and said, let's bring it through the SBA, I think it was an unbelievable idea, and you did exactly what you needed to do. But I'm one of those people when it started being pitted against, because I'm a sole proprietor, but I do $4 billion in revenue. And I would have been that billionaire that took the money from the little business. So I was not able to take the PPP money. And I caught so much criticism because I was the first person who did lay off 40,000 employees. Because the world doesn't understand that when you shut everything down from your casinos, which you and I did a few deals together, from the Rainforest to the Trump Marina, your tail of your payroll was $150 million the next 2 weeks. And we all pay yesterday's bills with today's income. And I wanted to put 40,000 people back to work May the 1st, but couldn't take the criticism, and even from the administration there was some, that bigger companies shouldn't be taking this money. But I don't have the ability to put those 40,000 people back to work. So I just wish that, don't add any money, but just divide it up and
So you're saying that because your restaurants aren't split up among thousands of people that own restaurants, and you have it yourself in the company?
Yeah, that it would have been one person taking this money,
So
but your team specifically wrote the bill for any restaurant under 500. This was for the restaurant business, which has only gotten 9% of the money. But if you would just split it up, and I'm not saying add any more money, but add a category for the larger private restaurateur that could go out and take this money and put it in a different bucket, so it wouldn't be me taking this money away from the little beauty salon.
So what happened to you then, Tillman? So where are you on that whole thing? How did you do with the PPP? How did it work out for your company?
I took the money and sent it back, and did not spend a dollar of it because
they found out you're very rich, and they said, what the hell?
You know what? But I also was the first person that opened the leveraged finance market and went and borrowed $300 million at 12%, where just 3 months earlier borrowed at 3% because I needed the liquidity to keep the company afloat.
So what did you do? You went out very early, right, for the money? And you found the market it was opened even at that early days.
Yes, I borrowed $300 million to add to liquidity, but it wasn't enough to hire back all my employees, which I would have loved to have done with the PPP.
What do you do with your basketball players that are making $25 million a year?
I have 2 of them that make 40, Russell and James.
By the way, they are good players.
They are good, but yes, they are getting paid
Could
because
I
there's a
ask you, just out
collective
of
bargaining agreement, and that's why.
Tillman, what's going to happen with basketball? Can you give us because I would be interested. Do you have any idea what they're doing now?
Yes. I think what they're doing is waiting to see what happens in certain states and if we're going to be able to play, making sure the virus continues to go in the right direction in the next few weeks. And I think that if things keep going the way that it's going, I think the NBA, the commissioner, Adam Silver, who's done an unbelievable job through this, and the owners, I think, will make the decision to try to start the season up again.
Will you finish the season or not?
I think that there's talk about finishing the season, playing X amount of games. The players need to play to get paid, and right now they're taking a 25% pay cut, and because they own 50% of our revenues, the players, unlike the other sports, and so they want that revenue and that television revenue, even if it's not the people in the stands revenue, so they can get paid.
Could you go immediately to playoffs, or is that not really possible?
I think that they would I think that we would play some games just to get it going again and create the interest, and then go right into the playoffs. But I think it'll be great for America. We're all missing sports, and everybody, wants to see these great NBA teams. But
good luck with that.
Thank you. But just create a category for us, Mr. Secretary.
Steve, what do you think about that? I mean, he's got a unique situation. He has a lot of restaurants. It's a big company, but
but I can't pay him.
You have other people where the company is the same size, but you have 2,000 owners. What do you think of that?
Well, it's a complicated issue, Mr. President.
That is
As I've said before, we didn't anticipate the Los Angeles Lakers, who I'm a big fan of, would be taking a PPP loan. And as a result of that, there was a lot of backlash around
paid it back?
And we went through the certifications.
I'm saying that for the media.
and,
They paid it.
Again, we realize the issue, how it impacts your workers, and we're sympathetic to that. This was a program for companies that were not necessarily quite as big, but
Yeah,
we
but this is
understand
different
your
than the
issue.
Lakers. The Lakers are a basketball team. This is a man that owns how many restaurants do you own?
600 restaurants, but they're all full-service restaurants. You know, I have 60,000 employees, and you don't have the ability to pay them.
I'm happy to follow up with you. We don't need to have this in front of
No, but
all
it
of
is
our
interesting
friends,
for the
but,
press to hear it because they understand the complexity of it. So if he had 600 owners and he franchised them out or something, but he had 600 owners, they qualify. If he has, if he owns it, it's a different situation, but I can understand what he's saying. So let's take a look at it.
And then just one more thing, if we could just do something with lease terminations, because I'm the largest operator in New York for full-service restaurants, and the $1 million leases, let them protect their rights, the landlords.
What's your largest restaurant? What is it, New York?
Del Frisco's, Mastro's, Martin's, the Strip House, the Bill's Burger and Rockefeller Center,
Right.
Dos Caminos,
Yeah.
on and on. So, but if we could
Good
just.
job you've done. I mean, you got hit by the plague, right? But outside of that, you've done a hell of a job.
Just trying to keep
It
up with
just brought you back to earth a little bit.
We were definitely brought back to earth.
You really have. You've done a fantastic job. Hey, you're a friend of mine for a long time, and
Thank you,
I
sir.
have to say, you paid me rent for a long time, right?
Absolutely.
For Rainforest
Never
and
missed
some
a
other
payment.
things. And you were never late. Now you're
You're a tough
great,
landlord.
A great gentleman, really a great gentleman. Steve, it's an interesting case. Okay, do the best you can. Good luck with the basketball.
Thank you, sir.
You have a hell of a team.
And
thank
thank
you.
all of you.
Say hello to those two great players, all of your players. But man, they can play, huh?
They can play.
So you say they make 40 a year.
Russell and James both make $40 million a year, and they were still getting paid. So a lot of my employees really wanted that PPP money.
You want them to play this year.
Yes, sir.
How many more years do you have together, right? So
I
you
have
want,
both of them for 3 more years.
you want them to play this year because magic
want
can happen, right?
Absolutely, a little
Okay.
magic, and
Good
all
luck.
of a sudden you get a big ring.
Good luck. Thanks, Tillman.
Thank you, sir.
Jared?
I just want to thank everyone for being here. It's been incredible to watch all the innovations that you've been doing in your business models to give more confidence to the public, to get open. The president identified this very early as a critical industry for us to focus on for a few reasons. One is you're a major employer. There's a lot of people who are hurting right now because the restaurant industry is closed, but also you're a gem of America. People love getting entertainment and enjoyment from the great work that you do. So this has never really been an issue before because the restaurant business has never been closed before for a period of time. So this is truly a unique historical situation that's occurred, and we're all in this together to try to figure out the best way back. But the quicker that we can help you figure out how to get demand up, the quicker you can hire back employees, and we can get Americans back to enjoying all of your fine establishments. So thank you for all you're doing, and thank you, Mr. President, for your leadership.
So, Tillman, he took a ventilator job where the country basically had no ventilators, essentially, and built an incredible empire for building ventilators in a period of very short time. And now we're supplying ventilators all over the world. It's an amazing thing. We got no credit from the fake news media, but what are you going to do? Can't win them all. And now the testing today on the Washington Post, they actually had a headline that the testing is there, but the people aren't there. We have so much testing. I'm sure the person that drew that headline in the Washington Post will be fired today sometime.
In the state of Texas, I know for 6 weeks, any employee of mine could go to numerous places and get tested and not even stand in line. So when I watch and see everything that people cannot get tested in America, and I don't know about all the other states, but I do have employees that have been tested in other states. I just follow it closer. There has not been an issue of people getting tested.
And, they sort of knew it. But
And we were even tested here this
see,
morning.
I think you should be entitled to that now, Steve, definitely. But,
And Mr.
yeah,
President-
no, we've done, really, it's been an amazing.
100%.
It's been an amazing job. Been an amazing job. We made a lot of governors look good.
Yeah. And Mr. President, I will say yesterday you had your #1 day in America, 422,000 tests performed, and you're about 11.5 million tests performed now in the U.S. thanks to your leadership.
Numbers that would have been unthinkable, I think you could say that, right? Numbers that would have been, John, those are numbers that could have been talked about, nobody would have believed it. So anyway, so please.
Mr. President, like yourself, I'm a New Yorker and a career changer. I was a former bond trader at Goldman Sachs, and now I own restaurants in Brooklyn, most notably Lilia and Missy in Williamsburg.
Good.
We help make every day a good day. Along with Thomas and Will, we're founding members of the Independent Restaurant Coalition, and we're grateful to have a seat at this table for the first time. The impact catalyzed by this pandemic is enormous. The prolonged economic shutdown created challenges for our industry that has to be met with policy to inject liquidity, investment, consumption, and hiring. The immediate and coordinated response by your administration to support out-of-work employees was inspiring, and it should make us all proud to be Americans. The intention of PPP to support small businesses and restaurants was pragmatic and encouraging. We have all agreed that it wasn't perfect, but we're working on it to fix it so that it could help us. But we need those fixes now. Like me, I have it, and I can't use it. I'm in the clock zone of 8 weeks. PPP is a bridge.
So do you agree with what they're saying in terms of timing?
Immediately, it must happen.
And you agree with the 24 number?
Yes, absolutely.
Did you guys meet before this or something? No, did you have a little meeting to discuss this, perhaps? Yeah, okay.
well-
Now I feel better because everyone's exactly
What
wants the
is,
same thing.
what is incredible about this Independent Restaurant Coalition, this did not exist 7 weeks ago. Restaurant owners didn't talk to each other, ever. And we were
I
able
bring
to...
people together. You've seen that in government. I bring the Democrats together with the Republicans, right?
And it's been a beautiful thing.
I'm only kidding.
We've been
Go
able to,
ahead.
we've been able to talk, we've been able to be creative and figure out ways to bring this
That's
industry
great.
back.
I think it's great. You got together and a lot of good suggestions have been made, and it's been made uniformly, so we really know your opinion as opposed to having all different ideas.
That's correct.
That's really great.
So
Helps.
PPP is a bridge. It will help restaurants reopen our doors. It'll help restaurants reemploy 11 million workers that are currently not working. In an effort to keep those doors open and to keep our people employed, we've proposed a stabilization plan, and we look forward to discussing more in the future with you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, great. How'd you go from Goldman Sachs to the restaurant business? How did that happen?
David Solomon didn't think I was very good at bond trading.
Oh, I'll bet you were. I'll bet you were very good. Are you glad you made that move?
I am. It's changed my life for the better on
So
every
it's just,
facet.
you love the restaurant business, right?
I love it.
I have friends that are in the restaurant. They love the restaurant. There's no business they want to go into.
We view you
like
as
the
one of
restaurant.
us.
Yeah, well, it's
We
true.
do.
Yeah, no, it's great. I know your business very well. People, unlike, well, there are other businesses, but just about as much as any business, they love being in the restaurant business. So that's great.
It's good to get out of the...
So you made a good move.
Oh, yes.
Did
It's
you
good-
make a good move financially?
I did. Very, very well.
It worked out fine, too.
Our restaurants are more profitable than the hedge fund that I worked at for 7 years.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Yes.
All right, now we don't have to give them anything.
But I want to go back to that because I want to reopen as soon as possible.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Thank
Okay,
you.
great, good. Good job, too. I know the one restaurant, I know it's great.
Thank you very much.
Gene, this is a man of great genes. His name is Gene, and his father was a terrific gentleman. You know that, right? Great talent. Go ahead,
And a
please.
great mother, too, right?
Maybe your mother's even better.
There are few industries where the workers have been hit as hard as in this particular industry, as Will was touching on. We announced 20.5 million payroll job losses, basically from the middle of March to the middle of April, and 5.5 million of those, more than a quarter, were in restaurants. Mr. President, you saw this coming. You acted with really extraordinary speed, and I think, as was said, generosity, among other things, in the unemployment benefit that was provided in the CARES Act. We at the Labor Department have been working extremely hard with the states to enable them to make that payment. As you touched on, they've had some problems because of their computer systems, which are old. Secretary Mnuchin and I cautioned the Congress that there would be problems, but we will continue to work with them to get those payments out. But even as we do that, we know that we're pivoting. We're opening. We're reopening across the country. There are glimmers and more than that as we begin that reopening, and so we will be focusing too on helping workers transition from unemployment back onto the job. And you hear a lot of numbers. A number that really sticks with me is a couple different surveys have shown, federal surveys have shown that 90% of workers who are unemployed right now have said it's temporary. And I want to make that right. I want to make that true. That's why, Mr. President, you want to safely but promptly reopen. And so we'll continue to work with.
That's a very important number.
90%.
If you go into a real big recession and you don't have a number like that, that's a tremendous number. That's really a great, it's a testament. Because again, it was artificially turned on and off, but now it's off and we're going to turn it back on. It's been turned on as of, I don't know, it almost feels like today is the first day. I think last week didn't feel the same. Now it feels good. People are starting to go out, they're opening, they get it. We understand the disease much better than we did when it first came in. Nobody understood it. Nobody's ever seen it before. And it feels much different. I mean, today's almost like the first day. But the expression that we like to use, right? Transition to greatness, we're going to be back. And what you said is a very important thing. People expect to go back.
And by moving quickly but safely, we get them there. And I had discussions with several of you about safety. We're very focused on that at the Labor Department, giving workers, and I know you're focused too, on giving customers the confidence as they return. And we'll continue to work with CDC and others to help on that front too.
And Gene, you have to help the truckers also.
We've been talking about the truckers, Mr. President. I can give you a report.
Because they've been out there, and I'll tell you, they work hard, and they have brokers that take a lot of their business away. They don't work so hard. They sit in an office someplace. It's not good. So I'd like to help the truckers.
Yeah, Elaine and I have been talking about it.
All right? Good, please.
Mr. President, Secretary Mnuchin, Vice President Pence, Secretary Scalia, thank you for having us here today. Of course, I'll echo what everybody else has said, how proud we are to be sitting here at the White House in your home, to be able to share some of our struggles and hopes and aspirations. The restaurant profession is a profession that's always dynamic, and you've seen that around this table with some of the things that my colleagues are doing, but we're also very united. As you've seen, and you just responded to the 24 weeks. Did we have a meeting before? Certainly we had a meeting before. Did we talk about it? Certainly we talked about it. Because we want to be unified in our approach, whether you have 650 restaurants, 2 restaurants, 6 restaurants, 1,000 restaurants, it doesn't really matter. We all are nurturers at heart, and we want our restaurants to reopen so that they can nurture our guests, our communities, and finally our country. There's something to be said for going last, because I just want to agree with everything that everybody else has said around this table, so I won't repeat it and bore us with more of the same. But I will tell you a story, a personal story, 2 personal stories, if I may. One about the PPP, and thank you very much, because it's been a lifesaver in many ways for me. I have restaurants, of course, where I have not been able to use the PPP yet. But I also have...
Why is that?
Because we can't open yet. And there's no point in me hiring back my staff.
Where is that? Where?
California, New York, Las Vegas, and South Florida.
I mean, I hear they're going to keep Los Angeles closed till the end of August. Is that a fact?
That's a good question. I'm in Napa Valley, but I'm not really sure about Los Angeles. I'm sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the mayor wants to do that.
Yeah.
That's a death wish.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there's death on both sides. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
There's death on both sides, not just a one-way street. And we solved a big problem, but you have to understand the other side of it, too. And they don't understand the other side of it.
Yeah.
Okay, please.
On the other hand, our consumer product good division, where we have 4 different businesses, has been thriving. And we have taken our PPP money and rehired 100% of the staff in those 4 companies. So I look at that, and I'm extremely thankful and grateful for all the work that you and your team have done so quickly to help us. On our restaurant side, I echo what everybody else has said. It's a little more complicated. I also want to thank you for voicing your support of BIG, which is our business interruption group, which I started with a couple other chefs, and has grown quite large. We've started to make some inroads with the insurance companies, certainly with some of the congressmen and some of the senators. So we continue to work on that for all businesses, not just for restaurant businesses. Finally, I want to talk about a small farm in Orwell, Vermont. A small farmer named Diane St. Clair, who is by herself with her husband. And this is about the supply chain and how important restaurants are in so many different aspects, but we reduce it down to individuals that we know, that we love, that depend on us as restaurateurs and as chefs. It's a woman who has 8 cows, who gets up every morning 7 days a week to milk her cows, let them out the pasture, begin to make her butter, bring her cows back at 4 or 5 o'clock, milk them again and put them to bed every day. I am the sole source of her revenue. She's not able to sell her butter anywhere else, so she's not making butter today. The impact that restaurants have in our communities, in our states, and in our country are extraordinary. We are, in many cases, the first job people have. My first job was in a restaurant as a dishwasher, making a little less than $350, but that was just of my age. And being able to move up. We give people the second chance in restaurants. And finally, people's last jobs are in restaurants. Those who are retired and on benefits are augmenting their benefits by working in restaurants. We don't really care about your education. We're not concerned about where you come from, your religious beliefs. We are open to everybody. We employ the most women of anybody beside the federal government, the most single-parent women. It's just extraordinary how much we embrace our entire country and what we do. And what we do at heart is we nurture. I became a chef, and I remember the day I decided to become a chef. I'd been cooking for several years. July 1977 in Narragansett, Rhode Island, working for a French chef named Roland Hennon, who asked me one day, "Why do cooks cook?" And I was certainly intimidated. I was young, and I said, "Chef, I don't know. Why do cooks cook?" He said, "We cook to nurture people." And there was something inside of me that resonated with, and I embraced the idea of nurturing people. And I have 1,200 employees. There are over 1,180 who are unemployed today that I desperately want to bring back to work so that we can not only nurture each other, but nurture those who come into our restaurants. Again, I want to thank you for having us here today. I want to thank all my colleagues for articulating everything that we wanted to say in such a profound way, and I appreciate the opportunity. So thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Beautiful story with the woman with the 8 cows.
Yep.
You wouldn't think that. Restaurateurs do, especially, I guess, some with an individual restaurant or a couple of restaurants, they do that a lot, don't they? They buy directly.
They do. Yeah, we support so many small farms around the country. I started an initiative called Big Hearts and Small Farms with 5 other chefs, just so that we can offer people an opportunity to buy some of the food from some of these small farms around the country.
Tillman doesn't do that. I don't think you do that with your 8 cows, right? He doesn't do it.
It's a little different, but it goes from the very small to the very big, and that's what restaurants are all about, and I'm proud to be part of this community.
What's the difference in butter? Tell me, the difference in butter between what she sells you and what you would normally be able to buy at a curiosity. I don't want to.
It is extraordinary because it is truly a seasonal product. So the butter changes flavor and color depending on the season. So in the spring, when they're eating green, when they're grazing on grass, green grass, the butter is
That's
a beautiful
fantastic.
orange hue. And of course, in the summertime, it turns lighter because they're eating hay. So, and the
Mike
flavors
just said there's
taste.
no comparison. He knows.
It's just, yeah. There's a tremendous difference in the
No
butter
kidding,
from.
so that's good.
Oh,
And
yeah,
you
it's extraordinary.
probably pay less too, right?
Well, I don't know how much I pay. It's not about how
I mean,
much I
no,
pay,
but
it's about supporting her and what she's trying to do.
Right, but would you pay less, generally speaking, when you do those things you do directly with the farm?
You know, when we deal directly with the farmers, I never talk about price. It's always about quality, because
Yeah.
we're about quality
good.
and building relationships with people. I've been buying Diane's butter for over 20 years.
No kidding.
She did tell me one time, I'll tell you a little story again if I can, that she had to raise the price of her butter. And I said, "Diane, I really don't know how much your butter costs, but I appreciate you telling me this." And she said, "But I also want to tell you why." And I said, "Okay, tell me why, Diane." She said, "My son was accepted at NYU, and I need to pay for his tuition." This is what happens when a guest goes into a restaurant and spends $1. You're supporting all of these people. You're supporting this young man who's going to get a degree from NYU. Should I negotiate with her on price?
Yeah.
No.
I think it's great. Thank you very much. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike.
Well,
I think the media wants us to go quickly. I know
Yeah,
that John is
I'll
over
be,
there.
I'll go very quick.
He wants to hit us with a question so bad.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and I have had the great privilege of sitting in this room alongside the President on many occasions over the last 3.5 years. I don't know that I've ever been more inspired by the optimism, the resilience, the love of what you do, and the people that you employ and the people that you serve than I've been today. So thank you all for sharing your stories. The President has brought together here our top economic team, the Secretary of the Treasury, the Secretary of the Labor, all the people that have been involved in standing up the whole of government response. But from the standpoint of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, let me just say thank you. This industry, 650,000 restaurants strong, had to make very, very hard choices. I want to assure you, you said, Sean, that you all consider the President to be one of you. And I can tell you, my friend considers himself to be one of you, and he always will. But he understood when we asked the American people, and we asked businesses like the thousands represented here, to shut down, to go to drive-through services, to find ways to innovate to meet your customers. We knew the sacrifices that were involved in that. The President directed our economic team to find a way, paycheck protection, to stand up and come alongside. But your decision, your company's decision to put the health of your employees, the health of your customers, the health of your community first, saved lives. And you are to be commended on behalf of the President and all of us who've worked 7 days a week on this issue here at the national level. I want to say thank you. The President and I are going to dismiss in a few minutes, and we're going to go to our weekly call with America's governors. And I'm proud, as the President is, that as we sit here today, 48 states have announced plans to reopen. It was a month ago the President had our task force release a plan to open up America again. And America is opening back up. And I just want to assure you that the counsel that you have given us today will continue to inform ways that we can support not just this industry and the communities, but support your state's efforts to safely and responsibly reopen and put America back to work. One last thing, Mr. President. One of the great success stories of this pandemic has been that the food supply has not been interrupted. And I honestly didn't know, Mr. President, before we got into this, that roughly half of America's food needs are met in restaurants and in those 650,000 establishments that we're talking about here today. And through this pandemic, not only did you innovate, you found ways to continue to meet that food need and keep food on the table of Americans, but I also heard just a week ago that it was restaurants that were transferring what you had in storage to your local grocery stores, to your local food banks, to make sure that Americans didn't miss any meals in the course of this pandemic. So for all those reasons, I say thank you, and just know that in this President and in this entire team, we are going to be partners with you, and we're going to bring back America and all of America's great restaurants bigger and better than ever before. And it's going to be sooner than you think.
Mike, what are the 2 states that did not open?
48 states have released plans. There's 2 that are, we expect them to be releasing plans very soon.
Who are they?
I'll get that to you before we talk to the governors.
Is Connecticut?
Can't do anything. So.
It'll open. It'll happen quickly. So just briefly, the Paycheck Protection Program has delivered over $30 billion in aid to more than 250,000 restaurants. Up to 95% of that funding is going directly to the workers' payroll. You know that? On Friday, the SBA published the loan forgiveness application, which ensures that all businesses, including restaurants, will not be penalized as long as they make good faith efforts to rehire all of their employees. You know that? I signed a bill providing federally funded pay to sick people that are sick and for family leave. So you have for sick and family leave, and that's a very important bill. So you have federally funded paid sick and family leave. And I think some of you are taking advantage of that. Businesses can defer paying income taxes until July 15th. We gave that extension. business can claim tax refunds by deducting their losses from the 2018 through 2020 against taxes they paid for the previous 5 years. That's a big deal. And then, as you know, we're going to Congress, and this is more pertinent to what we're talking, because you knew all of what I just said. You've been living through it. Restore the restaurant deduction to help jobless restaurant workers. So if a company pays or somebody pays, they get a deduction. That's going to create a tremendous amount of business. I think you're going to have to open a lot of additional restaurants in this country. I think it's frankly more important than even the other things we're talking about. I guess short-term, what you're talking about is more important, but long-term, the deduction would be phenomenal. Create an Explore America. That's Explore, right? Explore America tax credit that Americans can use for domestic travel, including visits to restaurants. That's a big deal. Grant restaurants more flexibility under the PPP. That's what we're talking about, right? And protect workers and businesses alike with curbs on frivolous litigation. Frivolous litigation, a thing I know something about. There's a lot of frivolous litigation. So we don't want somebody going and sitting in your restaurant, Tillman, and then suing you for $10 million because something happened. And they'll do it anyway. No matter what we give you, they're going to do it anyway. You know that. So I thank you all for being here. We'll take a couple of questions, John. And if you have any questions for these great restaurateurs, please ask.